Hello everybody and welcome back to Red Eagle Politics. Make sure you guys like this video down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. So this is the 2026 Senate map and it's not looking good for Democrats whatsoever. And they don't really have a realistic pathway at all to go out there and retake the Senate. I mean, it's true. Even if they flip Maine, they flipped North Carolina, they held on to Georgia and Michigan and New Hampshire, they still would be at 49 seats, and they would technically need 51 seats to go out there and reclaim the chamber because the vice president breaks ties in a 50-50 scenario, and for those 2 years, Donald Trump would still be the president, which means that Vance would be the vice president breaking ties. And it gets worse for them because not only is there really no shot that they will retake the Senate and a very slim chance they actually gain net seats, I would say lower than 50% odds at this point in the game, there's a sizable chance that they end up losing seats. And they already only have 47 Senate seats, and the Senate map is looking tougher and tougher for them as years go by because Democrats do have 2 seats in each of the battlegrounds or former battlegrounds, given the registration data in Arizona and Nevada. Those are prime pickup opportunities for Republicans by 2030. And it doesn't really seem like Democrats have many pickup opportunities outside of maybe Wisconsin in 2028, and obviously they're going to try in North Carolina, but still there's more room to grow for Republicans, and the majority doesn't really seem to be slipping away anytime soon. But then you look at some of the early polling that we've seen for 2026, Democrats are the ones in a whole lot of trouble. Republicans, they didn't really land any solid recruits in Pennsylvania and Georgia back in 2022. We saw what happened there. Across the board, they were the ones that were usually having these problems. Michigan, there were issues in the governor's race. You had the entire slate basically disqualified from the ballot overall, which definitely weakened the overall choices of candidates. I'm not saying they would have beaten Whitmer anyways, but I'm just saying that there are down ballot effects, and they costed Republicans in 2022, despite the fact that you had an unpopular Biden in the White House. Now it seems like we may have a popular Trump in the White House. I don't know how long his honeymoon period is going to continue, but either way, Trump is a lot more popular than he was back in 2018. It's not even close. The entire landscape has changed, which means that Republicans are on a pathway to have a solid midterm. And look at this, a new Senate poll out of Michigan. You have carpetbagging Pete Buttigieg, who is the Democrat frontrunner. He's leading the Democrat polls. He is well connected with donors. If he wants to run, which it seems like he can, he probably wins that primary. And by the way, let's just be clear here. He's a carpetbagger. He's an awful candidate. He was an awful presidential candidate. He was an awful Secretary of Transportation. And the guy doesn't really have any appeal. First of all, he's a carpetbagger. Second of all, he's got issues with black voters. He's got issues with Muslim voters, etc. Not really the best candidate overall for a Democrat to run in Michigan, of all places. Like, who does he appeal to? These, smarmy millennial types in these college towns. Maybe that's about it. Might be enough to get him the nomination, but in terms of winning, he's down to Mike Rogers, basically a very generic Republican, by 6 percentage points in Michigan in this poll from Epic MRA, which, again, they're not really all that partisan either way. When you look at this, this is just what you're just getting here. You have a poll that shows the Republican frontrunner in Michigan, whether you like Mike Rogers or not, beating the Democrat frontrunner by 6 percentage points. And then in Georgia, Brian Kemp. Everybody has mixed feelings about Brian Kemp. Some people just don't like him outright. The bottom line is the guy is popular in Georgia, and we tried to primary him when he was more vulnerable, and he won overwhelmingly, convincingly so. The guy's overrated by a lot of people, and it does seem as if, he's going to run for Senate, and he's probably going to win. This one poll has him winning over John Ossoff by 7 percentage points. And if that happens, folks, that's 2 flips. These are swing seats. You're going to have senators that are going to be probably voting with Trump 90% of the time plus. I mean, these are important seats to get when you talk about building a majority, locking the Democrats out of power. And if they're able to flip those seats and they're able to hold on in North Carolina, which Roy Cooper might not even go for it. If he does go for it, I think he could be a strong challenger to Tillis. I don't know if he'd win. I think it'd be close because North Carolina at the federal level and North Carolina at the state level are two different things. And it is true that midterm years in North Carolina and Georgia, based on the demography, it does seem as if the higher propensity coalition in those two states still tends to benefit Republicans, which means that it could be easier for them to, pick off Georgia in theory than to pick off Michigan. But you also have all that drama in the governor's race in Michigan, a three-way race. Republicans out of the gate could be favored. Democrats possibly putting up Mayor Pete Buttigieg from Indiana as their main candidate to run in Michigan. Please do it. It would be hilarious. I think they might do it. The Democrats are just losing their competency by the day. They could get cocky. They could say, oh, well, we don't like what Trump is doing, therefore it's not popular. I mean, that's how they've been operating. And it's just the opposite is literally been the case. And they keep digging the hole. But you talk about it, it's like Michigan. I definitely think that if Republicans could play their cards right, get decent turnout, they could, hypothetically, but they need to make sure that they find a way to get these disaffected voters out and voting for the midterms, because they could do so well. You have how many voters in the tank? 2.8 million on the Republican side for Donald Trump that you have to work with. You need to make sure those people show up, because if a good share of them do, even though they usually don't vote in midterms, maybe they will because Trump's in the White House and is calling for their votes. That would be huge because Republicans need to do that. They get these voters out in some states because there's competent state parties. Michigan Republicans and many Republican parties across the Rust Belt have not been known for being competent. Trump's wins are kind of in spite of the state parties, not because of the state parties. But there is potential hope in a place like Pennsylvania because Republicans really are registering their voters effectively. And the more of a lead you have, the easier it is to turn out the voters from these databases and stuff of that nature. But still, it's just not looking good for Democrats in the Senate, so much so to the point where they have to rely on Mitch McConnell to obstruct Trump's agenda. But it didn't work this time because Tulsi Gabbard, she even got Murkowski to vote for her. She got Collins to vote for her. She's somebody who campaigned with Donald Trump. Trump basically made it clear that she would be involved in the transition, involved in the cabinet. But you still had a lot of Republicans who had these so-called concerns because she, doesn't want Americans to die over in Ukraine for a war that is not of their best interest to be involved in. You name it. She supports peace. She supports stopping these wars overseas. They call her a Russian asset because of it. It's not really surprising behavior from our military-industrial complex. And Mitch McConnell's a big part of that. And we know, so much so to the point where he's going out there and he's opposing Hegseth. He's opposing Tulsi Gabbard, people that actually challenge the status quo there, because Mitch McConnell is a dinosaur. He's on his way out. He doesn't care about the base, the base that reelected him time and time again when he didn't even deserve it. And you're kind of seeing him now be that main obstructor to Trump's agenda because he can be. And I don't know what he's trying to do. He's just seething. He's just upset that the days of the old guard in the party are over. And that's largely thanks to Donald Trump. He's going out there, he's getting things done. He's making sure that his agenda can be fulfilled, as much of it as possible. And it's true that some things are going to take time. And until there's more funding, you're not going to be able to have the deportation numbers where you want them to be. Donald Trump has shared those concerns. You're not going to be able to snap your finger and see inflation drop overnight. Your policies are going to take a year or two to really come into effect to see the shift and the vibe shift in the economy. And it's funny because you have this report today from January saying inflation was worse than expected by 0.1%, and that CPI rose to 3.3%, which was above the expectations of 3.1. Inflation is back, it's up, and people are like, oh, this is Trump's fault. They can't exactly articulate why it's Trump's fault or what policy that he put into place that would have caused inflation to go up. But it's like, guys, January, who was president for 2/3 of January? It wasn't Donald Trump, it was Joe Biden. And you see that. And it's like, you have eggs that have been on the shelves from the Biden administration that are expensive because of bird flu, and instantly Trump gets in. A week later, oh, it's all Trump's fault. The eggs, they're not coming down in the prices. It's like, yeah, well, there's numerous factors at play. And obviously, they were not blaming the president for the past 4 years. They're going to try to blame the president now. Is it going to be effective? Yeah, well, the more they blatantly talk out of both sides of their mouth, I feel like they lose more and more people as Donald Trump gets stronger and stronger, which could lead him to have an asterisk midterm election in 2026, meaning you don't lose seats in the House, you don't lose seats in the Senate, you're not losing governorship. So we're not quite there yet. But we'll see what happens, guys. Anyways, make sure you like this video down below, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Follow me on social media. The links are all in the description down below. And I will see you guys in the next one. Red Eagle, out.